I don't think that Mormons have a reasonable faith in the Book of Mormon. So, for example, when you consider that there is no archaeological evidence to back the claims of the Book of Mormon, they just say, well, not yet, but like, we're quite far along in archaeology that they should find something, right, to support these claims. If the one who wrote all of the scriptures is always truthful and all-powerful, then what has been written by him will have evidence to its fact. Well, I mean, what Tower of Babel, for example. Everyone is there at the Tower of Babel, building it, trying to get to heaven. God comes down, and he confuses their languages and scatters them across the world.
Mm-hmm.
Why couldn't he do that with plants and animals at the same time? Here's the thing, is that evidence needs to be quality. They would have either known that was true or false, as opposed to the well-meaning Muslim or Mormon who believes it because they just believe it. They would have either known it was true or false.
There's a ton of issues with Noah's Ark. Genetics wouldn't allow for two of each species to repopulate the Earth. Humans would have needed approximately a minimum of like 10,000 people. And carnivorous animals had to eat other animals. And if they had to eat other animals, then they would have had to eat one of the two, which would prevent those animals from repopulating. No evidence of any animals making the trek from Mount Ararat to their native location, such as koala bears or kangaroos. Plants would have not been able to migrate at all. No evidence of carnivorous animals ever being able to survive on vegetarian or vegan diets. There's no archaeological evidence for Noah's Ark anywhere in Turkey. Places like Grand Canyon also do not point to a global flood, and then older texts like the Epic of Gilgamesh have flood stories in them, very similar to the Bible's flood story. And God's already demonstrated that he doesn't care to preserve his word perfectly, as seen with how scribes have incorrectly passed on the texts. If God doesn't care about preserving his written text perfectly, how can we be sure that oral traditions that became written texts were preserved perfectly? The oral traditions probably were not preserved perfectly because the writings weren't either. The only way to make the Noah's Ark story true is if God miraculously hid all of the evidence that his miracle even took place. And as we've already heard from Pastor Ed,
if the one who wrote all of the scriptures is always truthful and all-powerful, then what has been written by him will have evidence to its fact.
But there is no evidence that Noah's Ark ever happened. And what does Pastor Ed think of believing in something without evidence?
I don't think that Mormons have a reasonable faith in the Book of Mormon. So, for example, when you consider that there is no archaeological evidence to back the claims of the Book of Mormon, they just say, well, not yet, but like, we're quite far along in archaeology that they should find something, right, to support these claims.
My hypothesis is that Noah's Ark story is actually worse than having no evidence. Based on what we know of the world, the story cannot possibly be true without divine intervention. The lack of evidence, combined with the genetic requirements and other issues listed above that go against how our world works, is actually proving a negative. Noah's Ark couldn't have happened via naturalistic means, and because there's no evidence that the event even happened at all, then what's more likely? God did the miracle and hid all the evidence that it even happened, or was Noah's Ark made up and or modified from the Epic of Gilgamesh? So what reason is there to actually believe in Noah's Ark and that the story actually happened?
As opposed to the well-meaning Muslim or Mormon who believes it because they just believe it.